200 Las Vegas, New Mexico, 37701. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss mining and mineral exploration in the Pecos Terrero area. Notice to people with disability. If you are an individual with a disability who is in need of a reader, amplifier, qualified sign language interpreter, or any form of auxiliary aid or service to attend or participate in the hearing or meeting, please contact the San Miguel County Manager's Office at area code 505-425-9333 at least 1 week prior to the meeting or as soon as possible. Public documents, including the agenda and minutes, can be provided in various accessible formats. Please contact the Commission Administrator at either of the above numbers if a summary or other type of accessible format is needed. This notice was published on the Las Vegas Daily Optic on June 24th, 2019. Notice posted on the San Miguel County website at www.co.sanmiguel.nm.us, June 19th, 2019. At least 72 hours in advance of the meeting, the following agenda for today's meeting was posted and available for public inspection on the San Miguel County's website at www.co.sanmiguel.nm.us and also available in hard copy at the office of the San Miguel County Manager's Office. Today's agenda. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Madam Chair Maria Martinez.
Here.
Vice Chair Harold Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Janice Varela.
Presente.
Commissioner Max Trujillo.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Nahat.
Here.
Ms. Commissioner Varela, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, which is a symbol of friendship among the United cultures.
Approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Varela, second by Commissioner Trujillo.
Excuse me, there was a question about whether or not public input will occur, and it's my legal opinion that because this is a resolution concerning the public health and welfare of the county, including quality of life and clean water, that the public can contribute and voice their opinion in addition to the other scheduled individuals that will be testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Motion amended to include public participation? Public comments?
Motion amended by Commissioner Varela,
Second.
second by Commissioner Trujillo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Are there any individuals that are here to speak in public input? Can you please come to the podium one at a time and state your name? You will be given 3 minutes to speak.
Do you want to do that before or after the presentation?
No, we'll do it right away, right? We should do it right away, right, for public input?
Counselor, my question was whether we should have public comment before the presentation or after.
Before?
I think before. I vote for before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and looking at the numbers here, and because this is a resolution regarding quality of life, maybe we could look at allowing people a little bit more time than 3 minutes if they're not redundant, if they make good points, so that we can get a full record to look at it. That's the chairperson's request.
Okay, well, I had spoke with other commissioners and I had decided on, well, I think had decided on 3 minutes because that's what we allow at other meetings, so we didn't want to break the...
That makes sense.
Okay, so if that would be fine, we'll just stick with the 3 minutes. So whoever is here to speak, if you can go to the podium and identify yourself, first and last name, please. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Leslie Hamilton, and I live on Las Cruces Loop. My husband Bradford and I worked for 5 years to help research, compile peer-reviewed reports and articles and help write the San Miguel County Oil and Gas Ordinance that was enacted in November of 2014. When I read the article in the Optic regarding Co-Mexico LLC applying for an exploratory permit to look for mineral resources in Santa Fe County, just across the county line with San Miguel County, it occurred to me first that San Miguel County needs to get a hard rock mining ordinance on the books, and the oil and gas ordinance addresses many of the same issues and could be used as a template in writing that ordinance. I will try to quickly point out some of the reasons why. As a regulatory and zoning ordinance, it falls within the legal purview of a county government and the county's mandate to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. Baseline testing and follow-up testing of the air, land, and water. This would be paid for by the company applying for a permit, but carried out by an independent company. County services such as police protection, first responders, and roads that would be impacted through increased pressure would be outlined during the permitting process and subsequently paid for by the industry. The oil and gas ordinance is both prescriptive and performance-based. Light and noise pollution is addressed. Transgressions in surpassing the allowable limits on pollutants are dealt with by suspension or revocation of the permit. Monetary fines don't get the attention we require. Santa Fe County has a very similar oil and gas ordinance on their books since 2009. Our ordinance was patterned after theirs. However, there are some areas that we made more robust, particularly in the baseline testing and follow-up testing. This means that Santa Fe County and San Miguel County could work together to build ordinances that are similar in nature, making them more profound. Neither the Santa Fe County or San Miguel County oil and gas ordinances have drawn a lawsuit after having been on the books for 10 years and 5 years, respectively. As was done while developing the oil and gas ordinance, a moratorium could be put in place to give protection to the county until an ordinance is enacted. Our thinking while working on the oil and gas ordinance that we were trying to find the balance point between no protection, where the citizens are basically subsidizing the industry through either paying for the impacts or having to just live with them, and outright banning the activity. Mora County paid the price for enacting their ban, which drew lawsuits that forced them to have to take their first ordinance off the books. Recently, Mora County enacted an ordinance modeled after the San Miguel and Santa Fe County oil and gas ordinances. Thank you. So I was working to keep this to 3 minutes. I mean, clearly that ordinance is large, and there's a lot more to it. So I was just trying to hit some base points. But I just might mention quickly that one aspect of it that I feel is very creative is, okay, so I'm going to just talk, oh, well, one thing I should mention is, of course, in the follow-up testing after baseline testing is done, you know, you can't just get a water sample and take it to the laboratory and say test it, because there's too much to test for. So in the oil and gas ordinance, we have specific compounds that would be tested for, that are the most likely to be the problem, right? So that's the sort of thing that would have to be addressed in a hard rock mining ordinance, because those compounds are inevitably going to be different. And it's going to be different depending on what mineral they're interested in extracting. So, you know, that sort of thing is going to have to change. But the aspect of both the baseline testing which also protects the industry because that tells us, oh, that was there before, so they would not be responsible for that in some later testing, right? But they know better than anybody how good a job they do. So by putting this follow-up testing on there and saying that the repercussions is the possibility of losing your permit, that's very profound because it's so expensive to get to that point where they're actually to extraction. They would lose a lot of money if they lost their permit. So we did not say that this is how you're going to do the activity. I mean, the state doesn't even allow us to do that. But because of this combination of the follow-up testing and the possibility of losing a permit, they're going to do what they need to do to keep that end result from happening, so we don't have to address all of that and figure that all out. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting public input on the agenda. Much appreciated. I'm usually more organized. I've been a little too busy to prep for this meeting, so I'll try and do my best here within the 3 minutes. Pat Leon, Las Vegas. I'm with the Las Vegas Peace and Justice Center and Protect San Miguel County. Protect San Miguel County is a group that was formed once there were oil and gas leases signed in the county and we became concerned. The Peace Center has been partnered with the County Commission since 2005, sharing information, bringing informational packets and things like that to you. My bottom line message today is going to be that we need to modify our oil and gas ordinance. The Peace Center brought to the attention of the county years ago that they already drilled in our county and the commission had no idea. So I brought that data. That mine has since been closed. That was in the southeast part of the state of the county, and all we had was a gravel mining ordinance. This county, in its wisdom, once they learned about the oil and gas issues, wrote an awesome ordinance with the help of some community members, a task force that some of us served on. And at the time when it was passed, leading up to that, the industry was threatening repeatedly they were going to sue. The minute you passed the ordinance, they all went away, the legal threats disappeared, and we passed the strongest county-level oil and gas ordinance in the country. Mora has since learned, and they now have an ordinance that's even stronger than ours. There's things that have come to our attention since, and one thing that I brought to your attention in 2010. We were here in 2010 to tell you something important. You heard us, but now it's fully alive and active. We have 3 issues. We have the extractive industries with oil and gas that we are presently somewhat protected from. The second thing is helium. Unfortunately, there is a global shortage of helium, and further unfortunate is the fact that one of the largest reserves of helium is in the Tucumcari Basin, not just Tucumcari, but the whole basin, which is right here in northeast New Mexico. And now that the spaceport was just announced last month, they're going to go active now and start planning for their trips to space. It requires enormous sums of helium, so we also have to consider that in our ordinance. The method for drilling for helium is as toxic as for oil and gas. The other issue is the mining that is proposed on the edge between Santa Fe and San Miguel counties. It has a different type of environmental impact, but it still has an impact and it needs to be looked at. I have concerns about that company's background and previous violations, so there's a whole series of things we should get into at some point. And the third thing is REEs, and that's what I was here to talk about in 2010. China announced in 2009 they export 95% of the world's rare earth elements, and those REEs are needed for cell phones, computers, military equipment, weaponry, a lot of things REEs are needed for. When China announced in 2009, we're kind of thinking we might want to pull back on sharing our REEs with the world, the Pentagon panicked and ordered the U.S. Geological Survey to map out all of the deposits in the United States of REEs. Another unfortunate thing. New Mexico has the most. San Miguel County, Hermit's Peak, has an anomalously high amount of rare earth elements. The way you extract REEs is acid. If you've heard about mountaintop removal and you've seen mountains disappear, Appalachia, Tennessee, places all over the East Coast and Southeast, that's what could happen to Hermit's Peak. And that's why I came in 2010, because the USGS completed their survey. It's 104 pages. I can't print that up again. Back in 2010, the budget was a little better than it is now. But I did bring you the relevant pages. So you will see the beginning of the report, and then I printed up the whole section on New Mexico and where in New Mexico they found the REEs. So the veins in the rocks in Hermit's Peak would have to be soaked into acid for them to draw out the veins. So the whole rest of the rock would be dissolved and eliminated, and then the veins would be then harvested and used as rare earth elements. So we have a problem. We have to stay awake. We have to see our ordinance as a dynamic document that's always going to need to be updated. We need to stay within the law and the Constitution, but we have to take it right to the edge so that we are protected. I'm going to give you a copy of the report, and then there will be a few extras for some people in the audience. Is the optic here by any chance? Okay, so one of the things I do want to share with everyone, and I want to make sure you see it, is this map of our country. And the sources are all marked, and New Mexico is covered. And you will then see under El Porvenir, where they talk about the anomalously high amount at Hermit's Peak. So please count on the community to help you stay on top of this, to help you edit. Colorado has done some strengthening around extractive industries. We can learn from what other states and communities have passed, things that have not been legally challenged, because we want to stay within the law, but we also want to protect our land from invasive, toxic industries such as the extractive industry. So let's keep the dialogue going, and please utilize us like you did around the oil and gas. Most of you are new faces, and none of you were here in 2010 when we were talking about this, so you may not know you have a rich resource in some of us here in the community. Please utilize us, and I'll give you all a copy of this report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Noyola Padilla Archbeck. I grew up in Mora, the beautiful Mora. I live in the beautiful Las Vegas, and I camp heavily in Pecos. And I'm here to represent, first of all, myself, because I love all of these places. And I'm also here to represent the San Miguel County Federation of Democratic Women. And we support, hold on a second. We firmly support the development of a hard rock mining ordinance for San Miguel County with a moratorium in place until the ordinance is in place. Thank you all, and you can have the rest of my 3 minutes if you want.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak?
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Bob Wesley. I live a little bit north of Las Vegas, and I spent the better part of the years 2009 through 14 working on San Miguel's oil and gas ordinance. Let me give you just a bit of a history. I'll be really quick, promise. Back in 2008, San Miguel County got caught with its pants down. Somebody came and drilled a well, and nobody in the county knew that that had happened. And then there was a scramble to develop an ordinance. And that's a complicated process. There are a bunch of technical issues, some of which the previous speakers have mentioned, And then there are a bunch of emotional issues. There are people ranging from all the way, leave the industry, do what it wants, we need the money. On the other side, ban it in toto, and there'll be a whole lot of people telling you about these emotional issues. What I'm here today is to say, right now, before you have a real application for mining in the county, start a process with whomever the right people are to develop a mining ordinance that balances all the technical issues and balances all the emotional issues. And that's not something we're going to do this afternoon. It's a big job, and I'm going to encourage you just to get that job started. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Commissioners, my name is Frank Adello. I'm president of the Upper Pecos Watershed Association. We're a nonprofit water conservation group that has been in existence for the past 10 years in the Pecos area. We have close to $1 million of on-the-ground projects in and around the Pecos watershed of stream improvements to help water quality in that area. And I want to thank you for convening today for this meeting. Our position is that a 4,300 acre mine up in the Pecos Canyon would dramatically change the character of the canyon and completely degrade the Pecos River. The type of mine that they're proposing is a mine that will forever need maintenance and leak acid into the watershed. So whatever this body can do to prevent that from happening would go a long ways to support the community of Pecos for its longevity. Mining is a very cyclical industry. They come and they go, and the beauty of the Pecos area could be there forever. But as we've seen in the past in the Pecos area, we still have problems with the Terrero mine. When they left, they just left. That waste stayed there for 60 years before, for 50 years before it was addressed. And any ordinances that you guys can put together to prevent something like that would be obviously be helpful. But the end game on this for this company is to have a 4,300 acre mine. So if there's anything that you can do to prevent that, even that exploratory drilling, which is the permit that exists now, would be commendable and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure you see page 66 in that handout I gave you. There's a direct quote about anomalously high amounts of arsenic and
Is there anyone else that's here to speak?
My name is Lenio Rivera. I live at Terrero and have lived there 58 years. I own property in Terrero in Township 18 North, Range 12 East, Section 27 and 22. I own property in what the government calls Sawyer Mesa, across from Field Track Campground in Township 17 North, Range 12 East, and Sections 7 and 18 that adjoins this area where the Johnny Jones Mines is. The public has no access through Indian Creek to this area. There are two private property owners and a gate is locked. In 1919, the U.S. government passed the Pecos Wild and Scenic River Act. We were affected by that in Terrero, as our property adjoins the mine right at Willow Creek. They closed the road because of lead may be in the fish. The business owners of the area in Pecos went to Governor Bruce King and asked for him to intervene because it affected all their business. They asked my husband, who was born in 1927, right at Torero. The family had lived there since 1870. They asked him to give a blood test, but Bruce King required it from the community. My husband had lower levels of lead than anybody, and the canyon was opened again. Recently, there was a meeting with the Water Quality Commission in Santa Fe concerning water quality because they test the waters at the mine there. We showed up and testified there also because the family has drunk water from the Pecos River since 1870. Myself, I drank it from 1961 until present time. When our electricity goes out, we get water from the Pecos River. And the only thing that has affected the quality of our water is the pyromaniacal practices of the United States government that they don't allow logging, but they like to burn. We had to evacuate in 2013 from the Tres Lagunas fire. 2 weeks later, my husband died. Then I have no objections to any mining or drilling in there as long as our environment is protected. We have no right to pollute the water because we all rely on it. But the economy of this county is in the dregs. 3 schools have closed recently here in Las Vegas, not because of the elderly leaving, because young people with children are leaving. We need jobs, and you all need to impress on the Forest Service that to open the logging in these mountains and quit burning them up. Look at the haze we have to go through. Every June it happens in this southwest area. With it, we, instead of beautiful air that we're supposed to absorb and inhale, we inhale smoke. If everybody's concerned about the environment, do something about that. I'm sick of the smoke. I have to close my windows and doors every year in June when you wanted them open for fresh air. And the only time our water has been polluted was after the, what do they call it, the fire up in the Mora area. I forget the year and the name of the fire. The Las Trampas fire, that was what it was. Our river turned black after every rain for 3 years. We couldn't get water for me to wash clothes or to drink. We had to go way up on the hill on a spring to get decent drinking water. And I had to take my clothes to the laundry. It's fire and poor management of the forests here in New Mexico that are polluting our waters. So far, I've seen no harm done from any mining. Now, I will admit it has been done in the past. I freely admit that. We have to preserve our water and our environment, but we also have to make sure that the young people can exist in this county. They have children. We have schools. I pay taxes on property and livestock. I have no objections to anything that they are doing in Indian Creek to mine for or drill for minerals or exploratory drilling, but just don't pollute our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak?
Hi, Colin. Good, how are you?
I'm Colin Holloway. I live up there by Lower Colonias. And as my day job, I'm a land surveyor. So I kind of went and researched the documents that they had online there, and I was a little bit shocked. You know, the first, you know, let me just state unequivocally that it is my belief that when it comes to the extractive industries, one must always assume that they're going to lie to you. You know, when it comes to wet these people with their pipelines and or whatever, you know, they do not come to a point of view with honesty. It's always you know, beg for forgiveness after we've gone ahead and done it, and you know, time and time again, that's the way it is. Mining creates a huge amount of tailings. We know what happened in Pecos before. The Jones Hill part is going to be, you know, right at the crest that flows both into Macho and into Indian Creek. The chances of there not being effluent and tailings, lead, arsenic, you know, the mining gambit not flowing into those drainages is about zero. And so again, as a land surveyor, I went ahead and did it, and I plotted out, you know, because they have it there for guys like me that can do this stuff. You know, they had the first thing with the Jones Hill thing, which was, you know, a couple 138 acres. You know, bad enough as it is. It's in an existing mine. It's already been messed with. It's already got problems. But then I plotted out. I found another document in there, which entails thousands of acres, and it goes all the way down past Macho, across the Macho Creek, and into Dalton. There's a separate area they say they've claimed. Now, to make claims, you know, you bring it in and you record it as a legal document. And to do this, you're supposed to monument the claims. You know, this is all the 1876. You're supposed to monument these claims, you know, at one corner. And for these thousands of claims, to have it recorded as a claim, and to say that they've, you know, staked them. You know, when they say stake a claim, that's a literal statement that you pound a stake in the ground. There's no way. In April, they recorded that in April. There's no way they could have staked it, especially because the most shocking thing that I found is that they're making claims into the Pecos wilderness, on the north side of Doctor Creek. And that, you know, there's a lot of things that are happening. You know, for me, I'm a big wilderness guy. To me, that's you know, it's sacrosanct. You don't mess with the wilderness. You don't make end runs on the Wilderness Act. This is an end run on the Wilderness Act, just like the bicycle bill that the guy from Utah is trying to pass. I think it's really big, and I realize that as the
How long do you think you need? We're going to talk about the timing. One more than that. That's what, or more for me? That'd be good. Chairman, 15 minutes or longer? Or longer for me? Is it right?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, welcome.
My name is Paul Robinson. I'm the Research Director of Southwest Research and Information Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's an honor and privilege to be invited here to discuss this important subject. Being able to respond to mineral development interest as early as possible is always wise. So being able to address the matter as a public policy question within the first month of the notice being available is, of course, a prompt action. I've prepared a briefing paper that I provided to the Commission and a slideshow. And what I thought I'd do is maybe take 15 minutes to make an introductory presentation and see if that prompts questions that will address the other elements that I want to make sure the Commission is aware of. I've been working in my office for 43 years. My first trip to the Pecos was the week I got to New Mexico in July '76. My goal was to get to the Pecos Wilderness, and though my willies broke down in Santa Rosa, I made it to the Pecos. I've also done a lot of work on the Pecos mine remediation over the decades that that's been ongoing, and have worked on a wide variety of other mines, various commodities in New Mexico and other regions. So I try to bring that experience to you. The mystery initials after my name, MCRP, is Master of Community and Regional Planning. That's the program I've graduated from at University of New Mexico, where I taught environmental assessment methods for 20 years in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. So one place to start is looking at this picture from one of the plans that shows where the claim block that the surveyor who just spoke is located. It's due west of the Pecos River at the ridge to the west, starts about even with Torero and goes south. There's a number of prospects that have been identified by geologists over the last 40 years. The Pecos mine had historic production 2 million tons at about 16 or 17% metal, zinc, lead, and copper. And the property was operated, let's see if I can, okay, very good. And so that location, that can be correlated with other locations on a map. You'll see that the county line shows up on the map on the right. It's the dotted black line. And so most of the claim blocks, most of the claims are in Santa Fe County. All of the access, as you just heard, that's proposed is through San Miguel County. The watershed to the west, the Santa Fe Municipal Watershed, is a special protected watershed. The claims are right up to the edge of that. And the gray dotted line, this, I could do the wall, but not the map. The gray dotted line, this one right here, this is the Pecos Wilderness. So the west side of the Pecos wilderness, the west side of the plains has some Pecos wilderness. You see the plains are right up against the wilderness boundary. I don't know whether the survey shows that those are in the wilderness, but they're certainly butt up against it. And so that location, the drainage is almost all to the east from that divide on the west, on the Pecos boundary, and so all the drainage is to the east into San Miguel County. These areas that are grazing lands, hunting lands, recreational lands, commercial and non-commercial recreation of various kinds, and they're lands that have been inhabited for hundreds of years, and there's cultural associations with these lands that go back thousands of years. I mentioned this not only because these are important attributes of places in New Mexico. This is my first time to be able to say a pledge to the New Mexico flag, so I appreciate that. Certainly noticed. And so those cultural resources are particularly important to the people whose heritage they reflect. This is very important in the context of the Australian firm, which announced in April that it's got these rights to these places and rights of way. And within 2 months, they're proposing a wide set of activities. So the longevity of association with these lands on behalf of the community contrasts quite sharply with longevity of association with the current company of interest. This map shows a 10-mile circle around the Jones Hill mine site. I'm coming up from Albuquerque, looking at the beautiful scenery and trying to figure out where Jones Hill is visible from on the highway. Because you can certainly see the ridge as you're going up west. There's a couple of small promontories up there. I think it's going to be pretty visible, and the potential impact on visual resources is one of the kinds of things that some of the federal agencies protect and prevent impacts. Back in the day, in the 80s, new tailings pile for the Molycorp facility was proposed in the Guadalupe Mountains west of Cuesta. One of the reasons that was not approved is the high visual resource impact of that facility. You could see it from the top of Pilar Hill. So looking at the area of impact, you see there's some tribal lands in the northwest. There's not much land management that reflects the Hispanic heritage in this valley. And so being able to acknowledge and recognize the pre-statehood cultures as well as post-statehood is very important. And I don't see much local knowledge reflected in the application yet. These are a couple of pictures that show the conditions of the Pecos mine and mill tailings before reclamation. The mine was up on Willow Creek, as everyone knows, and the tailings pile was down about 14 miles to the southwest on Los Alamitos Creek. And an aerial tram was used to convey the ore. Companies don't like to move waste any more than they have to because it's expensive. So one usually finds mine waste at the mine site and mill waste at the tailing site. And mills and tailings are fundamental to base metal processing. So here in the county, there were no mill sites that could be identified. And so the mill was built on the side of Los Alamitos Creek, and there were no tailings containment structures used. The tailings were just dumped, neutralized into the creek, and those 2 million tons filled the creek. The bottom picture shows the gully cut through the tailings. I spent about 5 years working with people in the Upper Pecos, people at the Daniel B. Stevens firm, which did the design and construction of the remediation, and I've written several papers about it since then, because there's a number of innovative aspects of that, and it's rare to be able to look at reclamation 20 years after it's been done to assess the survival or the performance. Now this is hopefully a fun graph. This shows the sketch of financial and production phases in a mine operation. Below is cost, above is production in volume of material, and time moves from left to right. So the exploration phase is before there's any production and has lower cost than any other phase. And it leads to increasingly expensive phases, continued exploration, feasibility, design, and the big cost is in construction. The capital cost is high to build these facilities. Only after all those costs are expended does production begin, and production expands, declines, and then sites are closed and facilities salvaged. And continued mine and exploration is likely to occur during operations. So being able to address facilities at the early stage before major expenses are incurred is particularly important. And being able to address the realistic needs of mining companies is also particularly important. In order to get from exploration to feasibility, you need to have a couple of different things besides ore. Here's another picture that talks about the prospecting and exploration, development, extraction, and then closure. In order to develop a mine, you need power. You need the energy to drive the equipment. You need water. You need water to reduce dust. You need water for workers, and you will need water for the processing of the ore. And you'll need land to put the waste on. When we're looking at these deposits, and this is a picture that shows the data from the 1980 era. show, yeah, there we go, and we're going to get that full screen. So this figure shows the results of drilling done in the 1980s. And the bars on the side are 100 meters. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 meters. That's about 1,800, 2,000 feet going down. Now, the blue line across the map is what the figure is what I've drawn. That's the elevation of groundwater identified in the application by the company. And they talk about having a well. They don't provide any records of the well, the drilling, the completion, the producing zone, the volume, but it's up at the southeast edge of the Jones Hill site. So there should be some records of that well, including what rights to use that water they've acquired. And so the pink indicates the preferred geologic target, and most of it's below the water table. And so the idea of identifying the hydrologic conditions and preparing to protect them prior to any drilling is reasonable and appropriate. Drilling through groundwater requires compliance with Office of the State Engineer requirements, and hydrologic plans should be part of the applications. As those who've seen the material from the Forest Service and the state know, the company says it's hired consultants to do a hydrologic report and a biological survey and a cultural survey to supplement the application. But those haven't been done. There's no updates on that notice. And the Forest Service has allowed some of the activities to proceed. Things they're calling non-destructive activities, such as geophysical surveying and sediment sampling. To me, there are some disturbances of the surface that would occur from those things. People would have to drive to them. So that I'd be surprised if they're not addressed in the oil and gas ordinance, because converting oil and gas drillers from pits to tanks is one of the things that New Mexico's been able to do. And so keeping, not digging, using tanks, hauling the mud off, that's an alternative that would be less damaging. Other best management practices recommended are these baseline surveys, biota, cultural, as well as hydrologic, so that someone knows what's out there and what should apply to the restoration and reclamation requirements. And finally, the only property that this company has identified any interest in is these claims. And you need land for the waste rock outside the mill, outside the mine, and you need a central processing plant, mill, and you need the waste for that. And in their application, the company says that they are seeking to develop a volcanogenic massive sulfide camp and central processing facility. They don't say they're here to drill out an ore body and then sell it to a big company, which is likely to happen, but they're trying to identify enough of a resource to mine. It's not a recreational drilling. And so understanding the sequence and the types of land involved and the types of equipment and economic scale are appropriate for the community that might be affected by these things, whether the Forest Service feels it's within the forest's right to do those things. The 5 million tons of resource has been identified. There are probably 3 or 4 more stages of exploration before the company would have enough data to be able to prove that it has a mineable reserve, or rather than just a deposit. You have to prove that it's ore, not just call it ore. And that proving requires knowing what the economic feasibility is, knowing what the cost of water, power, transport, processing, all the equipment, and whether the deposit can make enough money to pay off all that. These facilities consume a lot of water, a mill. Something on the order of a half a ton of water per ton of ore is a conservation figure. In the old days, a company would crush the ore to talcum powder texture, mix it 50-50 with water, and send that through the tanks. Now there's much more recycle, and so that's down to about half a process will be is very important. You notice that the Forest Service deferred to the state public notice and hearing process. It's unclear what the forest is going to do, but their deference to the state shows how important the state process is. I was interested in knowing what CoMexico Inc. is, since they filed the notice, and I can't find anything. $4,300, 6.7 square miles. And I looked at a New World Cobalt, and they don't identify the relationship to their other subsidiaries, such as CoMexico. New World has other prospects, early exploration in other national forests, one in Idaho called Colson Creek. They've got a corporate value as measured by market capitalization, which is number of shares times how much their stock is worth. It's about $9 million yesterday. And the stock has gone from 14 cents in November 17 to less than 2 cents this week. So it's what would be called a junior, a small company interested in exploration and development of prospects, not one that has a history of mining. Some of the principals mentioned do have associations with some of the largest mining companies in the world, but this is a small firm that in the New Mexico office hasn't identified New Mexico contacts, but has very ambitious plans pursuing a mine and central processing facility would be a huge change to that area. And county, with its authority to address public health and safety and welfare, is in a strong position to be proactive. And so I look forward to any questions you have, and any way I can support your efforts to address this new proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
I have one question for Mr. Robinson, Madam Chair. Your information is very valuable. Have you compared your information to the Mining Act of, I believe it's 1972, to see where there's commonalities and where the information you're giving could be used in conjunction with the Mining Act?
So there are two mining laws to keep in mind. The federal mining law, the General Mining Law of 1872,
right,
addresses federal land. The New Mexico Mining Act of 1993 is more recent and more comprehensive. Right. And there are other places where the state and Forest Service have attempted to coordinate their regulatory systems. Generally, each require compliance with all applicable regulations. The state has more detailed exploration application requirements than the feds. Under the 1872 mining law, the Forest Service and other agencies have adopted implementing regulations. And the Forest Service's interest in protection and restoration of surface resources is the focus that they have derived from the 1872 mining law. I did testify on the Mining Act back in 91 and 92, and of course it took 3 legislative sessions for something to happen, so it's a very important development, and the experience here in the San Miguel along the Pecos was a really important experience at that time. In January of 93, the 2 companies that held the Ortiz mine in the Ortiz Mountains, the Cunningham Hill mine, they both were suing each other to see who was responsible for reclamation. And this was on the front page of the New Mexican in January during the legislative session when they were considering the need for financial assurance. So the mining companies were demonstrating for everyone to see why it's so important to be proactive, get the money in place first for each stage, including the exploration as the first stage.
Thank you.
Further questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
We'll move to regular order.
I'm sorry, can you take questions from the audience, Madam Chair? We might have questions from the audience members. I think Mr. Adello has his hand up.
I think it's at the pleasure of the commission whether or not questions will be taken.
Sure. Any questions? Come to the,
So you mentioned that it takes a half ton of water to process a ton of ore. And a half ton of water is about 135 gallons. And so they want to process about 5 million tons of ore. So if my math is correct, that would be like 675 million gallons of water.
Well, 675 million gallons times 3, that's about 2,000 acre feet would be the equivalent. The company has identified no ore. The resource that was identified in the 5.7 million, that's based on drilling done in 1980. So it was done by a competent firm, but it hasn't been assessed according to modern resource estimation methods. And the company's trying to prove up its deposit to a level to get into those modern methods. And that would be too small for a modern copper mine. But what you say is true. Based on that level of activity, if it's a 1,000 ton per day operation, it would run for 5,000 days. If it's a 5,000 ton per day operation, it'd run for 3 years. So one can figure the daily use based on half a ton times the throughput. Where someone's going to come up with that amount of water in this valley is going to be quite a search, and I'm sure that Conoco began that search back in 1980. They were very thorough with their identification of permanent easements. They'd be unwise to have not addressed the water need that they would have. So while there's no disclosure, it's certainly highly probable that they have approached water rights owners to try and transfer substantial amounts if the opportunity comes up.
Question, Madam Chair? Mr. Robinson, again, thank you for that information. Regarding the Mining Act of 1994, New Mexico, is it a requirement under the Mining Act for a mining company to reclaim the water that is used for the drilling process and transport it away from the mining site?
Well, that's a very interesting and certainly important question. The water used to make drilling mud needs to come from a legal source. It needs to be a right for that amount. And the way in which that water is released is controlled by water quality standards. When the company is proposing to let its drilling muds sit in a pit and evaporate, they're using evaporation to get rid of the H2O, the liquid, and then they'll just have a sludge that they'll be able to remove and dispose of, or dispose of in place depending on the constituents of the concern that it has. So using evaporation to get rid of water is very common for various stages of mining activities, from the big tailings ponds to the small mud pits.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very interesting presentation. You made a comment that New World Cobalt has assets of the order of $13 million total.
Their total cash value, shares times value, is under 10 million yesterday. If it popped up, they might be back over 10 million.
That sounds like a very small figure in finance, or to be involved in finance. All the operations you described would be necessary for development. So does that absolutely mean that they will sell their interest to a larger company at some point?
Well, thank you for your question. The first thought that comes to mind is that they've got to be able to establish a financial assurance to guarantee something, and I don't know what their financial capacity is or track record is, because they're so small and have so little experience. They do not have the financial capacity to develop an ore body, to do enough drilling to define an ore body in the level required by the Australian standards that will apply, since they're based in Australia. And so they're always looking for partners and investors, and will be, whether they, individuals or shareholders, can keep their interest, whether they're swallowed up by fish, or whether they join other fish, the acquisition. There are diverse acquisition models, but it's such a small firm with so little experience and assets, it needs to find the partners or investors just to get through the exploration stage, in my view.
Good question, thank you. Straight Rocks, you're an awesome organization. Do you know of any mining ordinances that exist anywhere in the country that we could build our ordinance off of that would protect us? Or do you think it's possible to create a mining ordinance that would be constitutional, that would protect us, that could potentially not allow this, I'm not talking about a ban, but not allowing this mining by this company?
So I'm not a lawyer, so parts of your question require legal knowledge and opinions. But from my experience, counties have authority to protect public health and safety and welfare. And health and safety are a little easier to define than welfare. Welfare gives the county a lot of breadth and depth in its range. And being able to enact a moratorium while thoughtful regulation is being prepared, that's a strategy that has been effective, certainly addressing solid waste facilities. And Santa Fe County has a hard rock ordinance because it was concerned about the next generation of the Ortiz mine, the Karachi Canyon, back in the 90s. There are several counties in Colorado that have recently adopted ordinances, and they've been able to learn from Santa Fe's experience, and Montana as well. But Santa Fe and Colorado have examples of how counties have been able to identify where their authority can emerge from among the state and federal authorities that also apply.
Any further questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you and my fellow commissioners for being here at this special meeting. It's very important, and the fact that all of us commissioners are here shows that how concerned we all are, and I want to thank you all for coming today, and you, Madam Chair, for putting this on the agenda. Thank you to our manager. Thank you to our IT department. Diego, thank you so much for making this available for viewing for the public that aren't here today. And thank you all for coming. Thank the public. Thank you all so much for coming today in this meeting for short notice. This is very important, and worked with Paul for over 30 years now on the Terrero and Molino site reclamation in my home village. And I've worked with Leslie and Bob on the oil and gas. I was not a county commissioner, but on the planning and zoning back then. So have some experience in this. And thank you, Ms. Padilla, for your comments, Archibek, about the Pecos and all of you. And thank you, Ms. Rivera, the closest neighbor to Terrero. I'm so glad that you're here. And when we do have another meeting, I'd like to host it in Pecos, but I just want to thank everybody for coming this afternoon and being here. And thank you especially to Paul for your information. Sometimes it's a bit technical and hard to digest. I ask the same question more than once because it takes a while to absorb all of this. So I just want to thank everyone for being here and helping collectively to figure out how we're going to protect ourselves. It's all about protecting the public safety and water. We know water is our most, besides our people, water is the most precious resource that we have in our community, and it's so important to protect that for ourselves and our future. My daughter was 4 years old 30 years ago when I was dealing with this. Now I have grandkids, and I'm taking them to meetings, and I thought, wow, in 30 years I might be a little bit older, and so I'm hoping that they don't have to continue this back 30 years in the future. So I'm hoping we can protect ourselves as good as we can for it now and future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Varela.
Thank you to the commission. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Garcia.
I have a question to our legal counsel. Have you had a chance to review the resolution, and if you have, do you approve of the wording on it?
The resolution is legally appropriate. A resolution takes the information that has been delivered here today and then tries to send out a general statement as to what the Board of County Commissioners wish to do. I think one of the areas in this resolution talks about the failure of the mining company to follow, to file everything appropriately and follow the rules concerning their filing of their applications. I did hear some testimony with regard to that, which accused the mines of failing to follow the procedural rules. The application, the resolution, is essentially one which takes the information that you received and also directs staff through our county manager to start researching and preparing documents, ordinances with regard to proposals by the mining companies, either initially, now, or working with other counties that might be affected. And so I would say this resolution is appropriate at this stage because it is very broad in scope and sends out a general notice of the feeling of the commission.
Okay, one more question, Madam Chair. I agree that we need to place a moratorium on mining so that we can have enough time to prepare just in case Santa Fe County follows through with theirs and it comes into San Miguel County. The only concern that I have is that I think that we should place a moratorium on certain mining because, as we see now there's gonna be some road construction coming up, and there's been calls to me from potential contractors that wanna come and maybe look at possibly a gravel pit for road construction. And so I'd like to pursue the issue of a moratorium, some language that would place a moratorium, but be specific, because I don't want to stop highway construction to stop because we have a moratorium. So maybe you can help us prepare a resolution to that effect. Because, the five of us here can do something like that, but we're gonna have to look for resources. I commend Commissioner Varela for doing this because it's a well-written resolution, but she's had to look for resources away from the county. And we have you as the expert attorney for us, and so I would hope that we can request through the
7-2019-01 in support of strong measures to protect clean water and quality of life, and in opposition to the incomplete application of the proposed hard rock mining operation in the Jones Hill area of the Pecos River watershed on the Santa Fe National Forest by CoMexico LLC, a subsidiary of New World Cobalt, and in support of strong measures to protect water quality. Whereas on June 6th, the Santa Fe National Forest announced that they had received a plan of operations from CoMexico LLC, the American subsidiary of New World Cobalt, to conduct mineral exploration on previously identified deposits on the Pecos, Las Vegas Ranger District. Whereas the New Mexico Energy and Minerals and Natural Resources Department has received an application from CoMexico LLC for mineral exploration in the Jones Hill area of the Pecos River watershed. Whereas the Terrero exploration project include 4,300 acres, 6.7 square miles of claims in the San Miguel County and Santa Fe County that border the Pecos Wilderness, as shown in the attached map from attachment 4 of AMNRD application. That's the one that Mr. Robinson had in his presentation. Whereas the company touts the previous identified mineral resource estimated at the site is more than 5 million tons, which, while not identified as an economically viable deposit, is twice the amount mined at the old Pecos mine and dumped at the El Molino tailing site. Whereas, according to the application from CoMexico, they have hired a third-party contractor to conduct sensitive critical species surveys, general biology surveys, hydrogeologic surveys, and cultural surveys to identify resources that may need protective measures. Whereas the Pecos River watershed provides critical water resources to the communities of San Miguel County, including municipal, domestic, and agricultural users, and provides clean water to numerous ancient and agriculturally and culturally significant acequia systems. Whereas the state and other respondents have responded to reclamation efforts of the Terrero mine and mill site and are still working to rehabilitate the Pecos watershed and its downstream tributaries from toxic waste pollution originating from prior mining activity. Whereas clean water is essential for the health and well-being of San Miguel County residents. Whereas many residents and visitors depend on the Pecos River watershed for recreational activities such as fishing, camping, swimming, and hiking. Whereas the local economy is dependent on clean water to support farming, ranching, and recreation-based economic activities. Whereas the 2019 New Mexico State Legislature passed Senate Bill 280, which funds $2.1 million to the Pecos Canyon State Park. Whereas outstanding national resource water ONRW protections outlined in the state water quality standards prohibit increased pollutions to waters. Now therefore be it resolved by the San Miguel County Commission that the Commission direct our county manager to formally request a public hearing on the exploration application and any subsequent permitting actions associated with the CoMexico LLC mining operation in the Jones Hill area when application is complete with the accompanying surveys. Be it further resolved that the county supports pursuing outstanding national resource water protections for the threatened portion of the Pecos River and associated tributaries. Be it further resolved that San Miguel County work with Santa Fe County for protection of the watersheds, the Pecos River, and associated tributaries. Be it further resolved that the county directs its county manager to review and revise any and all ordinances which apply to water resources and regulation of mining-related industries as may be necessary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Ahad.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 06-27-2019-01.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ahad, second by Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Round one. We'll be back. To be continued.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Motion by Commissioner Trujillo,
Second.
second by Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you again. Thank you all for coming to today's special meeting.
Bob.
Oh.
Where's the original?
Good to see you.
Vámonos para el chante.
Thank
Thank you, everybody. You live in Spitzer? Right at the Loop? At the Loop? The road's a lot better now. I used to be the sheriff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Liz. This administration, it's a start.